What's going on, everyone? Friendly Neighborhood Fanboys here, and we are here to discuss Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
Across the Spider-Verse.
Across the Spider-Verse.
Mm-hmm. Or as Miguel calls it, the poly whatever.
Spoderman.
Web. Yeah, Spoderman.
Spoderman 2099.
Yes.
Spoderman. Do you guys remember that meme?
Oh, I
course.
love it.
Spoderman 2099.
Yes.
That was hilarious.
That's what I look like in my Spider-Man costume. It's just, the eyes are like over here. It's just like I literally should be Spooderman.
That was when Twitter was like fun to be on.
Yeah.
Now it's
Now
just
it's
like
quite scary.
a desolate wasteland of just negativity.
Yeah.
If you're watching this on YouTube or listening on YouTube, also please hit that like button, that big thumbs up button. It really, really, really does help us out. It helps us create more content. It helps us get more awesome people like you listening and watching our stuff. And subscribe to the channel for all this amazing content and all the superhero stuff that we have coming up that we're going to talk about.
If you're listening to this on audio only, like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a 5-star rating because it really does wonders for us over here.
Truly. You want to start us off? Let's cover the story. Our story beats first. What are we feeling about the story?
Well, let's just start out with just everyone's first impressions.
Sure.
Let's go around. Reese, what were your first impressions? How did you feel about it exiting the theater the first time you saw it?
Can I tell you about how I was feeling when I entered the theater?
Mm-hmm.
I was basically wondering how the fuck or how the heck are they going to top this? How are they going to top the first one? Because the first one was so amazing.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, I think Ben and I looked at each other after the first kind of like intro scene and we're like, okay, so we're starting heavy. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
like it was like fun, but then also it was like, wow. So
Okay,
they hit you right
now
in the-
we know it's a different time.
Yeah.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should I just keep going or would just you
Yeah,
just want
sure.
first
No, yeah,
impressions?
keep going. Well, and then, yeah.
Okay. There's one thing that I really wanted to talk about was like, I think the first one obviously had its like comic injections of like, you know, the little like words coming up and all the little things like that. But I felt this one had a different art style in a sense where, like, especially with the Gwen stuff and how like the colors kind of like melted over the screen or like objects in the scene based on their emotions and stuff, which I really loved.
That
So
was
I will say that was one of my favorite things about the movie that I love, among all the rest of it, because it was amazing. But I just thought it was pretty cool.
Sick.
How they like showed that emotion through colors and all that stuff. So yeah, it's cool.
Unreal.
How about
Dan.
you? Sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
I think my first impression, like if I could sum it up, I was just so happy to leave the theater with just loving everything about the movie. You know, I wasn't like looking for things to like. It was like everything was so good. I was just so excited and happy about it. I was like, this was everything I wanted from a sequel. And then like, it just left me so excited and upset that this one ended, but it left me more excited for the next one. I'm like, I cannot wait. I almost forgot it's a 2-parter. So
Well,
like
we were saying like the pacing was like
I was ready for another hour. I'm like, oh, we're only an hour in the movie, like thinking in my head because that's how like invested I was. And then the to be continued happened, and I was cheesed. I was like, no, I was so excited. I was like ready to watch that unfold. So I can't wait for. The second I got in the car, I asked Ben. I'm like, so the next one comes out in like what, 6 months, 5 months? And he's like, no, it's not
Tomorrow, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Literally.
So I was completely invested in it.
What about you?
Yeah, you know, it's probably like mid for me. I'm just kidding. No, it was weird to come out of a theater and have zero gripes.
yeah.
Like
It
I
felt
actually,
good though.
Yeah, I haven't had that feeling in I don't even know how long, and like I don't even know what the last movie was where I felt that way. You know what? Like,
Well, I know the last movie that I felt that way, but I know what you mean.
well, here's like even the last one. I
BVS.
adore. Oh yeah, well, you know, like I adore the first like
yeah.
Into the Spider-Verse. I think it's great, but looking at that, like that's dust compared to this one. Now. You know what I mean? Like, still phenomenal. I'll watch it for sure again, but like. This one was just, it was so bulletproof. The plot was so tight, even though it was just the first part of something. It still had a complete arc from beginning to end, with the exception of obviously the cliffhanger at the end. Yeah, like I literally, like I forced myself to like review everything in my head for the past 2 or 3 days, and I can't find one thing that I didn't like.
I think the only thing
I agree.
Yeah, the only complaint that we all had, but it's actually being acknowledged by major news outlets, was the sound problems. Because I remember like the first, like during the Gwen intro bit, I couldn't hear anything, and I was getting like frustrated because like I thought it was the theater, but then I read an article that's just apparently like the first run of movies that went out. There's something wrong with the copy, so the audio is a little spotty in some parts. So like that's just, I'm sure that's something they could probably
because I was sitting there and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, it's weird because the trailers were loud before the movie started.
Yeah,
but then like. I was like, is this a mastering issue or something? Like, it feels like the dialogue was slid all the way down, the sound effects were slid all the way down, and the music was bumped. Because I was like, this feels really empty right now.
I only found that in some parts, though. Yeah. Like, at the beginning.
It was the voiceovers. It was
always
the voiceovers.
You saw it in IMAX, though, right?
No.
Or AVX or some.
No, it was just a regular theater, okay. So, and that'll actually lead me really quick. My first impressions, I saw it, I think, a day earlier than you guys. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know that it was going to be a two-parter because I did absolutely zero research. I saw the trailers, but I went in the movie completely blind, not knowing anything else about it. And honestly, I'm so happy that I watched it so fresh like that. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I love the first one. It's one of, if not the greatest Spider-Man films ever made, right? This is a new level, bro.
It is.
This is like, they turned it to 100, right? I left the theater and I was just like, numb. I was so euphoric leaving the theater. I was like, that was one of the best things I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. And that feeling hasn't died down. Like, it was not even me being overly hyperbolic or anything. Has not died down for me. Right. Yeah. The more I think about it after, the more I appreciate it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So I have a question for you. Yeah. And like, this is something I've kind of thought of, and I'm very like intrigued if you guys feel the same way, or if like, this is just a thing that I have, but I'm like, when I watched this movie, the way they did the multiverse is like, they basically introduced unlimited, infinite numbers of Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. But there's like, they somehow did it in a way where you like don't leave the theater with any questions. Like, oh, what about this variant? And like, this opens up possibilities for this. But versus like Marvel's been doing the multiverse now for like 2 phases. And like, there's so many like open-ended questions and like unansweredness. Yeah. And it's like, this did it in like arguably 100 times more bigger to scale. But like is way more tight of a narrative than any of the like the looping stories in the MCU. Like why is it like that?
And they even in this one, spoiler alert, built it off the back of the MCU version of it.
Right. Tied them in like perfectly.
Oh, it was perfect.
You see the blue exact.
Not only the MCU, it tied in the Sonyverse, the animated universe, and the MCU, and the Sam Raimi universe.
The entire history of the character in all of its alternations in one movie.
Yep. The 50s Spider-Man.
Literally.
That was sick.
I think another from a visual perspective though, because like they used the blue tree like from Loki, like the exact fucking like
the sacred timeline,
like,
and then they added.
And then they were like, boom, and then they blew it up with all like the spider webs and stuff. I was like, wow, that's awesome.
I think it's cool too because I think a complaint we had about the whole Kang thing was like, oh, there's no stakes, and you can just do all this. Whereas this one felt like there are stakes for every single Spider-Man because they kind of brought it up like these were the canon events. I think is what they called them in this of like this basically has to happen to every Spider-Man,
which was a cool callback to the What If series, the what do they call it, a Nexus event or something, where it's just like that had to, it was like in the Doctor Strange episode,
Doctor Strange one,
where it was just like no matter how many times it always happens. So that was cool. Yeah,
for sure.
I think the reason why they were able to make that multiverse like work so well is because, and I think the big difference between when Across the Spider-Verse does it versus the MCU does it is I feel like the MCU just does it because they're focusing so much on, okay, like we have a multiverse.
It's a red herring. It's like a plot tool. It's like we'll just go into the multiverse and fix the problem, right? Like
right. But this one though, there was still the stakes. Everything happened. You got all these cameos, different versions of Spider-Man, but at the same time, it boils down to the characters. Mm-hmm. And that's what I think is the most impressive about this movie. And that's why it's so powerful, and that's why the emotional scenes, which we will get into, it's just like they just hit so hard because at the end of the day, no matter how many Spider-Mans you see on the screen, it's about Miles, right? And it's about Gwen, and it's about the essence of Spider-Man, right? When you're looking at like the whole construction of the concept of a canon event, it still boils down to like the heart of the character, and I think that's why it works so well. And I think that's what the MCU is missing, is because you have so many different characters involved in this multiverse, but they're not utilizing it correctly, and they're not using it as an emotional tool.
It's not about the character.
This film perfected it. Yeah. It absolutely perfected it.
Yeah,
100%
MCU
agreed.
has become not about the character anymore. It's about, well, besides the corporate side of things, it's just become like about, it's like, okay, how can we just make, you know, the next MCU movie?
Yeah.
Like, you know, it doesn't actually like focus on the importance of that character development and growth. It's just like, well, let's just move on to the next thing, you know,
Exactly.
like let's just next one, right?
Exactly.
Versus when something comes like this comes out, it's so refreshing to see them actually care and take their time with Miles' story and Gwen's story, and which was another thing that was like one of my favorite parts. I loved that we got that whole Gwen backstory. Not something I expected, but that was awesome. Like I left the theater, I'm like, she's just as cool as Miles. I'm invested, man. Like Spider-Girl is sick, and like the spin on the Captain Stacy storyline was really cool too. Like I really enjoyed everything about it, man. Yeah.
I think that's a good segue to talk about the plot and like just like the story of the film though, because I mean, what I realized watching it is this film breaks the standard formula that we all complain about now. It like completely breaks it, right? Coming off of Into the Spider-Verse, where it's like a very like Miles like centric sort of story, and then starting the film with Gwen, I thought was a sick choice, and it was a great choice, and it was super refreshing because it was like the entire movie, like plot wise, which we can get into, but it just breaks the formula, and that's why it's so exciting, and that's why it's so riveting to watch.
Yeah,
right.
It was like a half-hour like mini show before, because like after her whole, it was like I want to say what 20-30 minutes of like the prologue, which was her storyline or her backstory, and then the credit for Across the Spider-Verse comes. You're like, okay, now the movie's starting, but it was just cool. We got like a mini movie, basically a TV episode at the beginning of the movie, and they're like, okay, here's what you need to know going into this story. Now, all right, here's Miles. There you go. It was really cool. And again, refreshing. I can't remember the last time we've seen like a 20-minute prologue like that in any form of, you know.
So I'm not sure if I should say this because New Rockstar's already broke it down, but I will just tell you guys anyway so you know. But apparently it was like they broke it down as that was the story that Gwen told to like all the other Spider-Men to like, so the whole movie is basically Gwen's perspective of all these events that happened, and it's the story that she tells all these other Spider-Men to help her join the team. So that's why it started off with Gwen, because at the end of the movie she's like, you in to all these like Spider-Men for the next movie.
Wow.
So I don't know, like New Rockstars did this, but I watched their thing and I was like, fuck, that's pretty cool. So,
That's really cool.
yeah,
I gotta watch
Wow.
yeah, but
Cool.
I
I mean,
thought
yeah, it did kind of feel like it wasn't her story, but she definitely was like kind of the narrator
Prominent.
of
Yeah.
it, right? She was telling the audience, she was kind of guiding us through the whole story. So that makes sense. I wonder if it'll stay that way for the second part.
Yeah, it was a discovery of her purpose, right? Because she goes into this like lost. She, blatantly says like, "I'm lonely. I don't have anyone.
Yeah.
My Peter is dead. Like, here are the circumstances. Like, this pushed me away from my father. I don't have any friends." Like, she even says like, "I had a friend," and she's referring to Miles. So like that whole thing for her is like, okay, I'm accepted. I'm part of something now. I'm part of this bigger thing, and it makes her stray away from her identity, and it's Miles that brings that back out of her. So,
And her arc at the end is wrapped up in a way because you get that emotional satisfaction because she starts rounding up that team, right? That she was missing at the beginning.
Exactly.
Oh my
And
God,
then the song that her band was playing at the beginning is the song that was playing at the end too. And then she's like, "Are you ready?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "I'm fucking ready. I'm like, I'm ready." And then
Literally,
to
and
be
then
continued.
cut.
And I literally
Audibly in the theater.
Yeah, I was like, "No!" I was ready. Dude.
What?
I was so upset because again, I completely forgot it was a two-parter.
Yeah.
So I was genuinely.
I kind of tell it was ramping towards that.
Yeah,
end
me too.
Because like everything just started getting really stretched out, and I was just like, okay. I'm like, this is ending soon.
Yeah, and there
for
was no
sure.
way they could have fit like a wrap up conclusion
Yeah.
in that amount of time because the movie was already like 2 hours or whatever. So it's like,
And I kind of like, and I don't mean this in a bad way whatsoever, but I thought it was very predictable, like what was going to happen with like Prowler, and then him being like the Prowler, like his alternate version of himself being the Prowler instead.
which was still such a cool twist.
Because of how long and drawn out it was. Because I'm like, why are they spending so much time? Like probably a good like 5 minutes of whole long drawn out screen time on just like him interacting with this version of his uncle. I'm like, there's something off. We still haven't seen that version of the like Peter yet. Like, what's going on? And then the Prowler, like he shows up, and I'm like,
Speaking
There
of
we go.
Prowler, I just really want to quickly touch on like I love that we got to see Donald Glover as the Prowler.
Yeah.
I was like, let's go.
Yeah.
'Cause, like, everybody's been talking
suit
about
too.
that.
Like
Yeah.
we've never seen him in a.
I
in a
was
suit,
so excited about that because like everybody's been like it was like a little Easter egg from Spider-Man Homecoming. It's like, oh, I got a nephew in the area, and then you find out that he's Aaron, and you're like, oh, cool, that is so cool.
And also, quick side note, apparently Donald Glover is also a loose inspiration for
Miles.
the actual creation of Miles Morales in the first place.
So
Really?
back in 2010, I watched this whole so like there was this whole thing where
The
like
community thing.
yeah, the whole
where-
community thing. He was campaigning. He was like, I want to be the next Spider-Man, blah, 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 blah. And like the internet was behind him and everybody was like, okay, Donald Glover's going to be the next Spider-Man. And then it didn't happen. But then we got that little nod in Homecoming, which was awesome. But then, and then when the Miles Morales debuted, it came out that he was the inspiration for the character, which was, really cool to see.
It was awesome.
It's
I
like a
loved
full
it.
circle moment,
That was
And
one of
we
my
got
favorite
so many-
cameos.
we got so many full circle moments though. Like the way they tied in all of the live action Spider-Man was like it wasn't blatant and in your face too. Like it wasn't like, okay, now applause for the next, Spider-Man to show up. It was like it was just like you were seeing it like a sequence of memories. You see the moment when, Andrew Garfield is going over Captain Stacy when he dies to Lizard, and then you see Uncle Ben dying from Clint Robertson's version from Tobey Maguire. You see that like the death scene there, and it was just like it was actually more than an exciting moment, although I was really excited when I did see it. I was like, but it was more like it was actually like a somber moment too, because it was talking about the Nexus events and like how everything is like Miles is not supposed to be Spider-Man, and you see all those things playing out. It was like it was so perfectly
It was
tied
so
together.
perfect.
It was so perfect.
And to your point about the lead up to Miles's version of the Prowler, one thing I will kind of say is I don't think that moment is really supposed to be about the revelation of the Prowler, because I think they intentionally made it so that you could see it coming. I think it's more of like setting Miles up in a situation where he is, because the one thing I really appreciate about this film is it captures the spirit of adolescence like so well in both Miles and Gwen. Even in like the parents, like on both like Gwen and Miles' side.
I really like the parents in this one.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And we'll talk about more about the characters, but I think watching the last 20 minutes of that movie literally felt like reading the penultimate issue, like second last issue of like a huge arc, right? Because in comics, they do that a lot. They bring these pieces in, they move all these pieces into position, because when you think about all that's happening in that moment, Miles is in the wrong universe. The Spot has leveled up, and he's not just the villain of the week anymore. Now he's his nemesis, right? Spider-Man 20, literally.
Nemesis.
Spider-Man 2099 is there trying to get him in like his home dimension. Gwen's there realizing she's in the wrong place. All these little like chess pieces are just like moving in.
Yeah.
And at that moment, at the to be continued, it's just like when you're reading like an issue of a comic book, and the last issue is going to be the next issue is going to be the last one, and like they just make it so like, how is he going to get out of this? What, like, how
It's
are they
not
going
like
to get out of
oh
this?
my god, how are they going to get out of this? It's like, how are they going to get out of this?
Yeah.
Like it's like an actual.
And I love that. Again, breaks the formula. It's not a regular to be continued like you've seen in all these other films. You know what I mean? It's like Empire Strikes Back. Like what Empire Strikes Back did with like the second movie is exactly what this is doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I thought it was awesome. It was so good.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah, it was
That's
great.
great.
So well written.
Even
best.
the way
Bulletproof
too
story.
they edited at first when like Miles goes back to his home universe, but because the spider bit him wrong or whatever. But the way they edited Gwen's, like when she's
Like
like
her
camping
sides.
outside
Yeah.
his house, and you're like, oh yeah, she's in the same universe, but she's not. But the way they edit it kind of tricks you there, and I was like, really well done.
That took me a little bit. I didn't
I didn't see it coming.
I didn't
until-
see it. I didn't realize that he was in the wrong universe until he was like talking to his mom, and the mom was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you did something weird with your hair," and I'm like, "Oh my god, he's not in the right universe."
Literally.
Right? And
That was
I
Spider-Man. You're like,
Yeah,
literally.
but it was cool how like I mean, this is just good storytelling, but how everything that was set up in the beginning actually paid off. Unlike
Oh, yeah.
a lot of movies that we've seen lately, which just throw random shit in there, and it's
Yep.
like either for fan service or whatever the heck it is. Whereas this was like, hey, we're gonna tell you this information at the beginning, so then it's actually gonna pay off at the end in a powerful, big way, and that was something that was cool. Like that's especially with the Spot. Like at first he's like this joke, and then you're like, holy shit, he's gonna like ruin this kid's life forever. It's like, oh nice.
Yeah.
Like that was pretty cool.
The bagel thing was hilarious. I like his backstory. I've seen so many edits on TikTok now where people are like, "This was the moment where he knew that he messed up."
yeah.
It's like the shot of him like frisbeeing the bagel into his head.
when he's leaning against the thing and the bread fucking comes out.
Yeah.
I was crying in the theater. I was crying. And it's just like the thing that I love about the story too, that I just want to throw out there is that nothing felt cheap. Like no plot point felt cheap, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what I realized, like, you know, I watched the moment when I really realized how well this movie was written is when Miguel or Spider-Man 2099 is telling him, you don't belong here. You were never supposed to be made. The spider that bit you was not from your dimension. So like you're a mistake, right? You don't belong here, which goes back to a main theme earlier in the film when his mom is giving him that monologue, be like, I don't want anyone to, you know, take that the little boy like away from you, and I don't want you to ever have anyone tell you that you don't belong there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So having that beautiful moment, and then fast forward to Miguel telling him you don't belong, right? It's that naive kind of like adolescent view of the world that Miles has, that kind of pure view of the world is being like ripped from him, right? But at the same time, they're giving you the clues, like they're setting it up. It's like the spider that bit you was not from your dimension, right? Was not supposed to happen. And then he tries to go home, sneaks past the other Spider Girl that, like, again, not cheap at all. Like a great sequence where he's like booting up the machine. And then finally he goes home, and then you realize, oh my God, that's why he's in another universe, is because he's going to the Spider's Earth 42
so good.
that he's from. It's like nothing felt cheap.
Yeah.
Like all that information was given to you. Like it was so geniusly written. Like when that moment happened, I was like, oh, there's so many things happening in that one scene where like Miguel's like reaming him out. I'm like, this is perfect.
And then because there's no Spider-Man in that universe, it's like ridden with crime and stuff like that. Like it's so cool.
A world without Spider-Man he goes to.
It's so sweet.
Can we talk about Miguel for a second?
Of course. Let's get into the characters, man. Let's get into the characters.
So I just want to say, like, in terms of just, I want to give a shout out specifically to like the score of the movie, particularly Miguel's theme.
So sick.
It's one of the coolest, most badass themes. Like I thought the Prowler theme, like that deep kind of like stinger from the first one, was like intimidating. This one was just like times 100.
So sick.
It was so cool. He was such an intimidating presence, and Oscar Isaac obviously is a world class actor, and he really brings it to voice acting. And yeah, no, you really, you
Duke Leto.
what did you say?
Duke Leto Atreides?
Yes, from Duke. Yes, of course. I did.
Of course,
Yell at me, Duke.
had to get a
Duke
Dune one in there. Had to get a Dune reference in there. Even the fact that his like webs glow and shit.
Yeah.
Dude. Like he was just. What does Miles say? He's like, "Are you sure you're Spider-Man?" Because he's so like intimidating and a beast.
Yeah.
And
Well, didn't they say he was a vampire or something? I don't really know his
Yeah.
backstory of the comics or anything like that. But didn't they say like there was a whole sequence where it's like he has to like synthesize like like an anti-venom to make him not turn into a vampire?
Well, doesn't it show that in the thing?
Yeah,
Like,
there was like a
he,
sequence.
yeah.
You see him do it. Yeah, and that's why he has like the glowing suit. And
I
stuff.
think that's a
Yeah.
callback to his original origin in the books, because he, like in 2099, Miguel O'Hara worked for Achatech. I forget what the name of the tech company is, and he rebelled against his like boss, and like part of the reason why he got his powers. But the boss was keeping everyone that worked under the company drugged up, like under like a stimulus that like they didn't know that was happening. So I might be reaching here, but I think that might be a subtle nod to his actual origin from the 90s. Not sure. I don't really read a lot of Spider-Man 2099, only like a few here and there, so I don't really know what they were going for or anything like that. But
I love that aesthetic though. Like I think when we
his
left,
suit is amazing.
yeah, the suit's amazing. Like when we left, we were like, you know, they came out in the same era, obviously, but Batman Beyond was very
Spider-Man Beyond,
very very like
Yeah.
closely tied with that too. So like even like, you know, we were looking at each other in the theater, like those shots of him on the rooftop when it's
Like
raining,
Blade
this red
Runner,
light, and shit,
yeah.
we're like,
Yeah, amazing.
wow, like
Yeah.
just
And the
his
score going with it,
presence alone, just in that frame by himself, is enough to like give me chills and be like, wow, I want to see, like, even though I'm rooting for, you know, Miles, Gwen, all the team, whatever, like I still want to see what Miguel is capable of now.
He was
Yeah.
so well done.
Yeah,
Because you see what he's trying to accomplish. Like, yeah, he is bad.
That's why he's a good villain.
Exactly. Exactly. He's a villain, but at the same time, he's kind of the hero, right? And
Yeah.
they, like, Miles and him have two different worldviews because he doesn't have that naive spirit anymore. So he's like, I've lost all this. I've seen this happen a million times. You gotta let this happen. And then Miles is like, no, I'm not gonna let that happen. Like Miles is still like the true Spider-Man. Still has that like really that sense of like unwavering justice.
Yeah, and
So
it's like
good.
it's not that. Well, I mean, maybe like he's wrong, but at the same time he's trying to hold the like Spider-Verse together and not letting shit happen. So it's like, okay, I see where he's coming from, but
in a way he's similar to a lot of characters that we've seen before. He's kind of like Thanos. He's kind of like Kang. He's kind of like the Watcher. Like he kind of takes a lot of these kind of, you know, I don't want to say gatekeeper, but like the overseer, like
for sure.
He takes on that role, but it's like it's that perfect fine line between like, okay, you understand his perspective, like he's not necessarily evil, but he's also preventing our hero Miles from, you know, progressing. So it's like, yeah, he plays that fine line, and his story is written so well that it's such a good, you know, it's such a good villain / hero, right?
Yep.
I agree.
So many good characters this movie.
Yeah.
The Spider-Man India sequence is amazing.
Oh yeah,
So funny, so good.
chai tea.
oh yeah,
Yeah, that was
TT.
hilarious. That was so funny.
Huge fan of
Which
TTs.
is it was funny that he was played by the same person that plays Dopinder in Deadpool.
Yeah.
Which we found out afterwards. We're like, oh, that's cool. That's a cool little.
I thought I recognized the voice. I just couldn't pin it down. So when you said that, I was like, amazing. It's incredible.
The Ben Reilly Spider-Man
Oh, Scarlet
sequences.
Spider, yeah.
And that's Sandberg, eh?
Yeah, it's Amber. It's also amazing though because like I don't know about you, but out of all the '90s like suits, I love the Ben Reilly suit.
I do too.
And like the way it was done in this, like with those like classic drawn
So
like
sick.
eyes and stuff like that, like the really jagged. I'm like, ooh, like I love that. Even though his
No, he was a
character was
joke,
pure
yeah.
comedic relief, like I was fired up seeing him still.
But it
I'm
was
like, I love that.
hilarious because it's making fun of like the 90s like over the top nature that all the comics were.
Like they were almost like anime.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that
Literally,
kind of
though.
style of
I
just
forget
like
exactly what he said,
melodramatic.
but he was like, "Now I got you in a headlock with my huge muscular butt," like whatever, like so funny. Or like he's narrating himself going through the alley.
And that's such a good role for Sandberg too.
Oh,
he
yeah.
Yeah,
plays
because
that
he's
so
the
well.
best. My favorite comic of all time, comedian, I should say.
I loved the 60s Spider-Man when the theme plays. It's like, oh, I got you now, and then the theme
He
plays, and then he gets cut
swings
off.
directly towards the screen.
Yeah, so he's not moving at all.
Yeah,
And
so
the
funny.
theme gets cut
That
off.
was hilarious.
That was so good.
He's in there for like 3 seconds. Too.
Yeah,
Like you
literally.
see it for 2 seconds and then he's gone.
I was crying. There was
good.
also like really cool like heartfelt ones too. I obviously we didn't grow up with this show, but like one of the newer Spider-Man cartoons, I think it was Spectacular Spider-Man. I want to say the one with like the kind of weird shaped head,
Yep.
like really
It was
short
a small one, yeah.
Yeah, he had an actual voice line. But then my favorite like non-speaking cameo was the Spider-Man Unlimited dude. He was the one with like the really like dark blue black,
Yeah.
which turned into like the scarlet. And then he had the
Such a
web wings
great
underneath. And he
suit.
was like one of the beefier ones that's like pointing at
Yeah.
each other. And like he was
Oh,
also
yeah.
there at the first group that goes to surround Miles at the beginning as well. And like I saw that and I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like
Incredible.
I love that.
It was cool too. We got a very small Insomniac, so PS4, PS5
Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Speaking role though.
Speaking role. But I also find it interesting because we were talking about this when we left the
Yes.
theater.
Yes.
Is that Miles, according to Miguel, Miles as Spider-Man doesn't exist in any other timeline, but we introduced that the Insomniac Spider-Man exists. So I personally think
Miles as Spider-Man doesn't exist.
in this universe yet. But what I think is like obviously he exists in the games, and they've acknowledged that the games exist within the Spider-Verse. So I'm thinking that the game has taken place after this movie, like after
I
whatever,
think just
however the
Miles
climax.
storyline takes
That's
place
what I
after.
mean. Well, but Miles technically is introduced in the first PS4 game, though, right?
But he doesn't get his powers till the very end.
Right. So, but what I'm saying though is that like that happens after this movie. I think. Like, I don't think that like the Insomniac Spider-Man we saw was pre the video
Yeah.
games. That would be the only one that.
It's not. It's during the first one because he has the suit that you get in the first game. Because he starts off with a different suit. He makes the suit with the white spider.
Right, but then how does Miles exist? So we're gonna find that out at the end of the next
But
movie.
here's the thing: he didn't say Miles doesn't exist
He
because
said Miles is
does
Spider-Man.
exist,
He said
as
Miles.
Spider-Man does
Well,
exist.
Miles as
Miles
Spider-Man
doesn't-
exists in the game.
but after the first game. This is what I'm saying. So he gets his powers, and basically what's a post-credit scene in the game, but he still is not Spider-Man. Like that. Anyway, all I'm saying is it happens within the first game, but before Miles gets bit at the end of the game.
It happens.
Which would be
It happens between the game and that cutscene.
Correct. Right. Yeah.
It's a great
Anyway,
movie.
All we're saying, because I was honestly thinking of that the whole time, which is like, maybe they'll wrap it up, but it was the only plot hole because they're acknowledging that like the game is obviously canon to like the multiverse because he literally shows up and he's like, guys, or whatever he says, right?
And I feel like this movie takes everything into account
It
because
does,
they have to.
100%.
Like, every frame of that
But-
movie was a piece of art.
Yeah,
that-
but Dan made a good
Legit.
point. Literally, but Dan made a good point after, and he's like, because Miles kind of like changes it up in this movie.
He could be the reason why the Miles actually comes into the timeline in the game universe,
Exactly.
basically.
Exactly.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
It's
also,
crazy how they're able to connect all that, like
Oh,
with this
yeah.
movie, like in like a non-official sort of way, like just
Yeah.
What are you gonna
They
say?
also had like I don't know if it was like an actual comic line because like I'm not very familiar with that, but like the cat that had spider powers
Oh yeah,
like-
Caddy.
in the games, like you actually get like one of the suits you can unlock has
Oh,
the
yeah.
cat in the backpack with the mask
I
over its
forgot
face.
about that.
And he
Yeah.
like helps you with takedowns and stuff too, which is hilarious.
That's
So, like,
amazing.
I don't know if that was a nod to that or if like that cat actually exists in the books. No idea.
I
but-
also love that ASM 90
Mm-hmm.
reference too, and that they just show the cover of it. I'm like, what are you guys doing to me? What are you doing to me? You know what I mean? So that was awesome.
I
That
mean,
was
someone
awesome.
we haven't mentioned yet, who I loved in the last movie, is Peter B. Parker.
Of course.
Guy's
Yeah.
a beast.
Oh yeah,
Always a big
he's
favorite.
great.
Yeah,
He's
and
great.
his little daughter Mayday.
Mayday.
That's kind of a cool name.
Mayday
Like
Parade.
I like it. I think
Yeah.
I think it's cute.
Any
And
cameos that you liked too?
I mean, like I laughed at the Peter Parch car.
Oh,
yeah.
And like the Lego universe
Lego
is
yeah,
pretty
like,
funny.
The Lego
too,
one was
yeah.
awesome. The Lego was
Yeah.
awesome.
I love that J. Jonah Jameson is played by
He's a Nexus
J.K.
character.
Simmons,
Yeah.
and he is a
Yeah.
Nexus.
Yeah.
Yeah, a Nexus
He is-
being, yeah.
Except in the Insomniac one, which I
Yeah.
hope they do,
Yeah,
like
I
they
hope
get him
so
in the
too.
next one. But yeah,
Peter
that's
Park's car
hilarious.
was hilarious.
Yeah.
You know, Peter Park's car. Okay, a little trivia about Peter Park's car. If I can go into this a little bit, if you'll indulge me. Peter Park car was created by Dan Slott, like during the actual like Spider-Verse.
That's Steve Opening's brother. Or?
Yeah. During one of the Spider-Verse storylines, and because you know, like the original Spider-Verse like comics, I think actually he came out in the sequel that's like coming out now still or just wrapped up. I can't remember, but there was a moment where Miles gets to like the scene of like where everyone's like fighting or whatever in like Peter Park's car, and they were all the Spider-Mans. I forget exactly how it went. All the Spider-Mans were like, man, how did you get here so fast? And Miles is, and Peter Park car is like, he's like, because I'm the best parallel Parker or something like that. Anyways,
Wow.
I forget. I'm like heavily paraphrasing. If I can find like the comic like clip, the page, I'll put it up. But it's hilarious.
amazing.
Peter Parked car.
It's incredible.
Going back to that Lego for 2 seconds,
Yeah.
the one line that absolutely killed me was when Miguel's on comms with him when he's about to like jump with the bracelet, and he's like, thanks for all the work you do. You're one of our best.
Yeah, you're one of our best.
Yeah. I was literally crying.
Okay,
at
okay. There's just another segue to the comedy in this one was perfect. There's no Marvelisms. Like it was just like
It's pure
stuff
Spider-Man.
like that.
It's
But yeah,
Spider-Man humor.
but it's just like even that little line. Like I love that line too because it was so like not a throwaway, but it was just like yeah, you're one of our best. It's like what? Like that.
Yeah.
It's just so funny. And then obviously the one that we saw in the trailer too of like let me guess. He died.
Yeah. Which again, like hilarious, even when you're
Amazing.
watching the movie.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And then I looked at my uncle. Yes, he died.
I saw a little Easter egg too in the new Rockstars video where like the therapist is it was like on the degree on the wall is like a Ditko or a Steve Ditko reference as well. And then there was another reference, I can't remember exactly what this is in the new Rockstars breakdown, but like that Spider-Man is supposed to be like the oldest Spider-Man, like the first Spider-Man, so like that's why he's just like so cynical. He's just
Yeah.
like
Let me guess. He died.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's awesome. Fucking, I love how I'm pretty sure Genki was playing Spider-Man 2.
He was.
Oh, yeah.
They Insomniac confirmed that was actually footage of Insomniac Spider-Man 2.
Yeah, because when he
Yeah.
was like going through, I was like looking to Thier and I was like, what is he playing? What is that?
so what happens when
What
he
is
plays
that?
what happens when he plays as the Genki
Who
bot?
is that? He plays himself.
Genki!
Genki.
I can't
All
believe
of us.
things are tinkering. Oh my god. Okay, I'll briefly indulge on the so for those
if
of
you
you
made it
watching
this
on
far,
TikTok. Yeah, if you've made made it this far, the reason why I had a little bit of a
Dan fucking cried.
a reaction. Okay, we've had this inside joke that like in the first Miles Morales game, and it's like it's not even like that. Note we tried to go back and find the scene in the game, but it's so minor compared to how like dramatic we made it. But basically, like it's the point of the game when you find out. Spoiler alert for the first game or Miles's game. You find out that Finn is the Tinkerer, and Miles is distraught, and he goes,
"Wait, say it how it actually is."
He's like, "Genki, I can't believe Finn's the Tinkerer, Genki." But then it turned into Genki. I can't believe Finn's a tinkerer, Genki. What are we gonna do, Genki? Oh my god, Genki! I don't know what to do. So then I just was not expecting, just like a Genki name drop, and it was so perfect because in our reaction we went silent. He opens the wingsuit and he goes Genki, and I fucking lost it. I couldn't keep it together.
It was just so perfectly delivered.
It was perfect. Yeah. It was a perfect series of events that happened that just made it so perfect that I couldn't contain it because
and I was thinking of you while I was watching it when he's talking to his parents about like, oh, like my friends, yeah, well, there's Genki. I'm like, Genki. Oh, so good. I loved Spider-Punk. Spider-Punk was one of my favorite parts of the movie too. I like his books, his stories, and actually like the art that's in like the latest Spider-Punk run was like fully on display in the movie, and I thought that was so cool. I thought that was awesome. There was a shot of like you can see his back, and it was almost like magazine like cutout, like that's kind of like the art style. And he's like standing still, and the guitar is upside down across his back, but like the layer underneath was changing shape. Yeah, and I'm like, this is almost crazy.
Like they're cutting it out of the book. Yeah, it's insane.
I'm like, this is nuts.
He was also animated on different frames too. I think he was he was even less than what Miles was in the first one. I think Miles was on like 12 frames a second. Apparently he was 6.
Oh, okay.
So he was
it's so sick.
And but the 60s Spider-Man was 1.
Literally a cutout.
And story-wise, again, how nothing felt cheap in that movie. He's like, yeah, you know what? Like in his anarchist sort of, like Sex Pistols sort of way. He's like, yeah, you know what? I'm done. But then he leaves his homemade bracelet, like the dimension hopping bracelet, like to Captain Stacy. I'm like, yo, nothing feels cheap. Because how else was she supposed to like go back to Miles's dimension without it? Like, because you see Miguel, like all that's destroyed, right? And I'm like, this story is so bulletproof. It's not even funny. And it's going to be hard for me to watch any other superhero movie going forward because everything else is written so lazy compared to this movie. And I'm like, there's no excuse for it. Yeah. Like, this script is unbelievable. The story's great.
Yeah, everything about it. The visuals, the score, the characters, dialogue, like performances, everything.
Yep. I'm going to be spitting at the screen watching Flash. unless Affleck is on, then I'll be okay.
I'm
kidding.
Is it too much to say this was a 10 out of 10 movie?
No,
I think it was a 10 out of 10.
This is an easy 10 out of 10.
I literally dug at it trying to make it not a 10 out of 10, and every time I'd be like, no,
it's incredible.
It's nothing sticks. No argument that you can make sticks.
We even talk about visually. Like, this is one of the most innovative animated films I've ever seen in my entire life, and I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm serious.
I hope it, because obviously it is made in 3D space, like it is a 3D animated movie, but like I hope going forward, other companies like start to adopt this visual language, because we've been in such a look at like old Disney movies, right?
Yes.
Like all the animated movies, like 2D, flat planes.
Talk this shit. Go.
WB actually brought that. Actually, it was still Disney first. I think Hercules was the first one to incorporate 3D elements in with the 2D. But then WB kicked it up a notch. Iron Giant came in. Meshed
incredible.
It perfectly. People, to a point where people don't even know the Giant was 3D, right? And then we became, Shrek, full 3D. And we've had that now for, I think, so long that it's almost time to adopt these new styles and get into different stuff, right? Because now we even had look at Toy Story 4. It's like hyper real to a point where it's like it's still stylized and obviously 3D, but it's like the best thing I've ever. It's real rain.
It is. It's really cool.
When they're going through that shop that what's her name is in, it's like all the volumetric light and stuff. 100%. You're like, is this real life? And they put
100%.
When you're looking at the Toy Story 4 shots of Bo, and it's Boca behind it, it is really cool.
Yeah,
but it's time to move past it.
100%.
Because everyone has emulated that Pixar style for the past 20 years,
Mm-hmm.
25 years, sorry, right?
Honestly.
And I think this is why like this film hits you so hard and like visually it's like you can take any frame and blow it up on your wall and then it's a piece of art, just like you said, right? And there's so many visual styles going on, but it works so well.
Yeah.
It kind of changes based on the character that they're focusing on too.
I
like,
love that.
Of course, Gwen is kind of like the watercolory, like you were saying, like based on her emotions.
Man, I think you were saying that, right? Like her world,
It's insane.
Yeah.
the backgrounds
it's
in her world look
amazing.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Everything becomes brighter too, and she finally resolves that stuff with her dad too. It's
Yep.
like, yeah.
Even too, like when Miles goes into the incorrect world at the end, you can kind of see the shift in art style between that world and like his actual universe too. Like it's very subtle, but you can see it's a lot darker. Something's off, and then you go on the outside with Uncle Aaron, you see it's like, oh no, the city's completely corrupt. So it's like it's small little things like that. And then like they kind of did it in the first movie again with like Miles moving in 12 frames a second compared to Peter B moving in full 24. But then this movie is just like it's all over the place, but meshed so well. Like if you like on paper, that sounds like it would be a headache to watch. But it's not. Everything flows so nicely.
Yep.
Yeah.
One thing too that I really love, one of my favorite things that they did with the art style, and I don't know if they did in the first one, correct me if I'm wrong, but like it's almost like single frame flashes of like you can see like the concept art in between like the next frame. Like there's particularly, I noticed it a lot when it was Miguel stuff. I don't know if it was happening a lot more in the other scenes, but like if you freeze frame, you can literally see like the artist signing off on like the concept pages and stuff. So they snuck in like the concept art in between frames of like the actual
noticed that
movie.
twice,
It
yeah.
was
That's
so
sick.
cool. I'm like
It's
that.
so innovative.
It
like-
is, and it's like it's like what you were saying though. What I find so interesting, it's like it's new, but it's almost a back to basics, but in this like super complex, artistic way where it's like you don't feel like you're watching like a 50s Mickey Mouse cartoon. You're watching something that you've never seen before, but it's done in this like very kind of old school way.
Yeah, it's like it's 3D emulating 2D,
Yeah.
but painterly and artistic.
Yeah, and it's like here's a
insane.
comic book that's moving.
Yep.
Like even
Yeah.
even the
Yeah,
little like
basically, yeah.
like Miles grabs that thing from that street vendor and it's literally like grab, like the word
Yeah.
grab.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
stuff like
Which
that.
they
It's
did a
so
lot in the
sick.
first
yeah.
one too.
Like
Yeah.
scene
Right.
enter tags, like when everyone like
Yeah.
pops up for the first time. I was like, that's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. And like the thing that I love is like they're not really going for realism,
Mhm.
right?
No.
But
which
they're
is
owning
what
it.
yeah, exactly.
They're
Which
really,
is
like-
what that Pixar style is, and like that is cool. But we've seen it done so many times. Even like you were saying, like Shrek and all that. The DreamWorks stuff is still they kind of found their own thing, but it's like still emulating that Pixar style.
Mhm. Yep.
This just changed the animation game. It
For
did.
sure.
Mhm.
And I don't even think it's really that far like to say it. Like this is genuinely one of the most innovative animated films I've ever seen in my entire life. It's so
And
good.
it tripled its opening numbers as
Oh
compared
yeah.
to the first one.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
It's already made twice its budget. It's already
know.
made, I think I was seeing today, it made 208 million.
Which is wild because
On
when
his
the
opening
first one
weekend.
came out, people were like kind of like they were still in that heavy kind of Pixar mode. Like, oh, this is kind of weird. This is going too far back. This looks 2D. Like to the average moviegoer, it's like
Well, I think a lot of people
Right.
still have that old school mindset of, oh, it's animated, it's for kids. Some of the heaviest themes
Yeah.
ever in a fucking movie. I was like, am I gonna cry right now or no? Like,
Yeah,
there's some
honestly.
deep shit that they're dealing with, and
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like I don't really get why people still have that view of like, oh, animation is shit. It's not as good as live action because like this is the best piece of art I've ever seen.
Well,
in
I
a
was
movie
even
theater.
telling you this like after we saw it. I'm like I think there is no excuse for that live action stuff having mediocre story. I'm not saying the Spider-Man stuff because like I loved the last Spider-Man live action
Yep.
movie. I'm just saying it's like because they have so much time to flesh everything out and draw each panel and be so meticulous about how everything works, how everything fits together. Like it has to be so planned and meticulous, which is why like 99.9% of animated movies that come out are usually pretty well reviewed and like pretty tight story wise, right? Like even Toy Story 4, going back to that dynamite movie, story wise and everything, right?
I think to your point too. Sorry to
No,
interrupt.
go.
I think what you just described about that mentality of like people being like, oh, animated movies are for kids or whatever. I think that's why like these big corporate companies, it kind of gets slid under the rug that like an animated movie can touch on some really dark themes and mature things, because it's just like the corporate companies are like Disney's focused on the MCU and they're focused on their churning out their next big thing, versus like I feel like they're not as scrupulous. Like yeah, you could do you can talk about some dark stuff in the cartoon, because it's like they have this mindset that it's like, oh, it's just an animated thing, right? Versus in the real life movies, it's like, no, we just got to be as PG as possible, get as many consumers as possible. We gotta reach as many audiences as possible.
And you know what? To tie this into DC, because it always happens. I think
DC's a perfect example.
James
of that.
Gunn is doing a good thing now, and he's saying, I don't care about making I don't care going forward about making everything rated PG-13 like it's been locked down since basically the Nolan trilogy. I'm going to let that open up. So I'm going to allow some stuff to be a little more light. I'm going to allow some stuff to be literally rated R, because he's like, if you make a good movie, people will come. That's it.
Yep.
That's it,
People love X-Men, but they made Logan, and that movie crushed.
Yep.
It's one of the best X-Men films ever.
It was one of the most disturbing superhero movies I've ever seen.
And I love it. I bought it on Blu-ray. Like, that's how much I love it. So it's like...
Thank God we have James Gunn. Like, I love that guy. No.
All right, I think we should wrap up our thoughts here.
Really quick, what do you guys think about how it's going to wrap up in the third film? Because I was thinking about this when I was leaving the theater. Like, do you guys think that Captain Morales should die? Because I don't want to see that shit.
So I have a little bit of a theory on that. I think because at the end of the movie that Captain Stacy switched around, that's the trade-off. So Captain
I was feeling
lived,
that too.
And I think we're going to see...
She breaks the canon with that moment. And that's what I noticed as well.
And so that's how we introduce Miles becoming like canon across all of the universes, because now everything's been flipped on its back now because Captain Stacy, who was obviously supposed to die according to all the Nexus events. So, but I think the trade-off that we'll see Miles' dad, I think we will see him die in this movie or in the next movie. And then, but that will be the moment that allows Miles to become, canon across all of the universes. I don't know. That's kind of what I was thinking.
What do you think?
I'm not sure. I have conflicting thoughts, because like I can see it going that way, but I can also see it, I can see this Stacy thing being a catalyst for his dad to be able to survive without repercussions. But they explain that like when these things happen, like bad multiversal kind of like collapses can happen, right? So it's like they haven't explained why all of a sudden it's okay to make these changes, because they've already shown us that, hey, it's not okay. So like
in the Spider-Man India's world, that's what
exactly
happened, yeah.
So I'm kind of like I don't know, to be honest, because like I hope they explain why that Captain Stacy moment was the anomaly that maybe changes things going forward,
or maybe it doesn't.
Or maybe it doesn't.
There hasn't been enough time yet. So it's like she might go back to her world and like her dad's waxed, and it's like, oh, awesome, perfect.
Yeah. Or her world just gets completely destroyed, and then she has to stay.
And then maybe that's the inspiration for Miles to be like, hey, do you want your entire world to go? Because this is what just happened to mine. So it's like, like that could happen too.
And again, it's like they pay such close attention to everything. And in the game, even Miles' dad, same thing. He's getting honored at an award ceremony. Yeah. He dies. So like that always happens still. And if our timeline wacky theory is correct, then like
maybe
his dad's still dying in these other timelines. So like,
but Aaron, like his uncle,
Aaron Neville.
Yes.
He already went. That's what I'm saying.
He died.
Already
so
went through that loss.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just like in according to this logic, like it's one, right? It's not all of them, right? Every Spider-Man loses one. So like in this one, it could have been Uncle Aaron. So I don't know. There's so many ways it could go. I think though I'm very curious, because the only Spider-Man we didn't see was Tom Holland's. So
true, but he gets the mention in like the first 10 minutes of the movie.
Did he?
That little dude that
little nerd with Dr.
Oh,
Strange.
yes, right, yeah.
But
I wonder if we'll see
I have a
him,
theory where like it's gonna get to a point where Miguel starts calling in like villains and stuff too to like try and take down Miles, right?
See,
I was thinking to myself, I'm like, the one thing we really haven't seen here, with the exception of like that old
Vulture.
Vulture,
Is like that Sinister Six like classic rogues lineup.
which you do see in like that Multiversal Prison. Like you see Doc Ock from like the '90s cartoon in there with Alfred Molina's voice on top of that.
Hello, Peter.
Mind you, so sick. But like, I think that'd be a cool kind of like thing at the end. Like maybe the Spot gets defeated, but then like Miguel kind of steps up as the main villain now, and he's like the only thing separating Miles from saving his dad or like collapsing.
That's
the universe,
literally
right?
what I was gonna say. My prediction is that Miguel's gonna be the one to kill him, and then Miles is gonna have to kind of dethrone him as like the overseer or something like that.
Yeah. There's yeah.
Do you guys want to see Captain
No,
Morales
obviously
die?
don't want
Because
to.
I kind of want because when you look at some of the things that he was saying in that movie, it's like when Miguel has him pinned against like the rocket, he's like, I'm gonna do shit my own way. I feel like that is kind of not just like some line, like some throwaway line, but I think that is gonna speak to like the main theme of the film, and maybe the next one. Like, I don't want to see him die. I want to see Miles figure a way out of it. The only thing is plot wise, because the story is so tight, it's like what decision makes the most sense. You know what I'm trying to say? And this is like hard speculation.
Yeah,
But
I think though, if he's going to die, it'll be on his own terms. It'll be a heroic death on his part. It won't just be like he
be
just
like a
gets caught in
Jonathan
the
Kent,
crossfire
you
or
know?
gets murdered. It'll be like a John Kent type, like not to that extent,
Yeah.
but like, you know, whatever's happening, like Miles's dad either saves someone or has to sacrifice himself to save someone, and he makes that sacrifice and not. Like he doesn't just get
Well, yeah,
killed,
Miles
like,
has
down
that
the bed.
premonition of him running after the kid or
Yeah.
whatever kid's like on the ground there.
Exactly.
So, it's
like at least it's not in vain. Like, you know, he's not Uncle Ben just randomly getting shot on the sidelines or like, you know what I mean? Like almost like they did with Aunt May in
The Insomniac game.
that and the Tom Holland one.
oh, true, yeah,
because
yeah,
she
yeah.
goes and is trying to save Peter. Like she's not just a random damsel in distress that gets waxed by.
Well, it's her fault she died. She's the one that trusted the green column.
No, but I mean, still in that scene, she's going up behind him. What an idiot!
I was
Like a
almost
hang
crying
gliding
during that
accident.
scene.
Yeah.
But yeah, and anyway,
We have 2 minutes.
Gliding accident. What
yeah.
an idiot.
Let's
Mom, the meatloaf.
let's wrap it up here though.
Yeah. Closing thoughts. Movie's perfect. 10 out of 10. One of the greatest films I've ever seen in my entire life. Top 3. Let's go.
Legit though.
Yeah.
Top three animated movies for sure.
Yep.
I would say top 3. Like for me, it's like BVS, Man of Steel, Across the Spider-Verse, bro.
Wow.
This movie was
Wow.
unbelievable.
Is that a like real statement or are you just
no,
saying
no,
that
it's a real statement.
Wow.
Like this movie was like
This
right
just-
now how
this
I'm
is up
feeling
there with
about it.
Zack Snyder for you. That's a big
Yeah.
statement.
Oh yeah, bro. And the
Damn.
more I think about this shit, the more that I love it.
I
Like,
think
the
it's a
more.
top 10 movie for me for sure. Only because I'd say top 5. Top 5. Top 5 for me. I do want to see it again though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
I'm
I
excited
feel
to
like
see it
once I see it again, I'll really
I love it more.
yeah. Like it's not gonna be one of those movies where, you know, that we've seen in the past year or two where we watch it and be like, awesome, can't wait to never see that ever again with my own fucking eyeballs.
Yeah.
Like
Can't wait to say after I walk out of the Flash. I'm just kidding. I'm gonna go into it with a you know.
With a
anyways, I'm gonna say 10 out of 10, top 5 movie.
top 5 for me for sure. 10 out of 10.
I'm on the spot now. It's up there. It's up there. Top 7. Top 7.
Top 7.
That's still
Dan,
that's
Dan
still
the Dark
pretty good.
Knight is above it for sure.
I can't.
I knew it.
can't.
The dark.
Tenet is up.
Oh yeah, fucking absolute masterpiece. The worst movie I've ever seen. I love
Love
Chris
Nolan.
Nolan, but oh my
I
god.
do.
Citizen Kane. All right. Thanks for stopping by.
Yes, thank
we really
you.
appreciate you.
Let us know what you guys think about it.
Yeah.